So back in a project we worked on over the last modules, and attached you find that snapshot in case you didn't follow along or you just want to make sure you're using the same version I'm using. This is the shop we built in the last modules, and there we can view our details, we can place orders, and the problem with the orders, for example, is that right now, whilst they are placed and whilst we can fetch them, they're anonymous, or our user is anonymous. So these orders here don't belong to a specific user, and that's one of the problems we'll solve. And in addition, in general, a shop app only really makes sense if we have a user. So therefore, we'll make sure that we can log in and sign up. And that requires two things. In our app here, it requires an authentication screen, which shows us this login sign up form. And on Firebase, we'll also have to tune something. There are two things you have to set up. The first thing is that we need to lock down our database. Right now it's open to everyone, and that was good for the last module, but now that we'll add authentication, we want to lock down that database to only allow access by authenticated users. And you do that by going to the Rules tab here in your database section on Firebase, and there, instead of having read and write access set to true, which means everyone can read and write, you should set this to a string where you say auth unequal to null and do the same for writing. And that's a special syntax which is understood by Firebase, which basically tells Firebase if the user is not authenticated, then the user does not have read or write access. You have to publish these rules thereafter, and the warning you're getting here about these rules not being secure actually just means whilst the API is now locked down, as soon as you are authenticated, you can actually read and write all data, so even orders that don't belong to you specifically as a user. This is fine for this demo, because if we would want to change this, we would have to dive deeper into how to configure Firebase rules. That has nothing to do with Flutter though, and it also won't help you if you're using a different backend. In case you plan on using Firebase, however, you'll find some resources attached, some links to the official docs that help you with understanding the rules so that you could configure them in more detail. These rules will do for us, and what they will do is they ensure that unauthenticated access is not possible. And I can prove that if I go back and I load the shop page, now we have a spinner which won't stop. And because I haven't added error handling here, we're also not seeing some error message. You could, of course, implement that to show some error text or anything like that. This fails now because here we're getting an error, because now basically that HTTP request doesn't succeed. We get back an error response because, well, the API is locked down, and currently we are not logged in. So this works as intended. Now we need to change one more thing on Firebase, and that's here under authentication. You need to set up a sign-in method. So there you need to unlock email password sign-in, because that will allow us to create users with the email password combination and then also log users in with that combination. So once this is enabled, we can continue with the steps we'll implement throughout this module to sign users up and sign users in and get that token by Firebase. So for now, our Firebase work is done, and we can go back to Flutter.